Evening, citizens. This is doing these videos is getting more and more difficult. I guess it's just getting more and more difficult for me, not that it's getting more and more difficult. You know, when you're having difficult times, it becomes not only practically more difficult, but psychologically so. And you know, you have, you know, at least I do have, you know, great stretches of time where you feel kind of that there isn't much point in doing very much about this. And then, you know, and then you snap out of it, and then you start to feel a bit better about things, and so you carry on. And sometimes I feel inspired to approach a particular subject, and then sometimes it's you don't have a particular subject in mind, which is where I am at the moment. But one of the things that causes you to become, I suppose, despondent in a way is there's a reality of stuff, and then there is also a forced reality, which is sort of pushed on you in a way, and it's what I would call, I don't know, it's what I call sort of misery porn, and you know, particularly when you're listening to all sorts of people online. And there are people who are trying their best and trying to get through this and trying to, who are basically trying to win, you know, trying to win or trying to be on the winning side, and have to not so much be on the winning side, but have your side as the winning side. You know, we might call it the side of freedom, perhaps, just to give it a very generic name. But you know, sometimes I get a bit, I get a bit irritated with some of the stuff that Mrs. X watches sometimes, and I hear it. Not that I'm necessarily watching it, but I hear it. One of these people is a guy called Neil McCoy Ward, I think his name is, and it's funny because it seems to be that he never ever seems to say anything positive about anything at all. You know, it's, you know, they've got it all clamped down. There's going to be a collapse. We're all going to lose everything. Um, and it seems to be that they are him, and he's just had this an American guest on his show. You know, I wasn't watching, but I was hearing it out of Mrs. X's computer, and it's like these people seem to be uh, reveling in telling you how bad things are and how bad they're going to be, and they're going to be a lot worse than you think. And no matter how negative and pessimistic that you might think you're being, it's never enough. It's never enough. You know, it's always worse than you think. Um, and yeah, obviously this gets a bit wearing, as you know, you can imagine, and probably you're feeling it yourself. Um, and you know, it's one of the reasons why you know, my output is so sporadic at the moment. Um, and you know, these people are bloodsuckers, really. You know, they're just bloodsuckers, and whenever you get a win, you know, whenever we get a win in any sense, there's always somebody else come along and say, oh, it's not really a win. Oh no, it's not really. They just want you to feel like it's a win because, and it's just utterly tedious apart from anything else. And it's almost as if it's almost as if these people are like controlled opposition themselves. They're forever telling you that somebody else is controlled opposition, but they're the ones that are telling the truth. They're the ones that are the real deal. But you could quite reasonably think that maybe in their demoralisation of people, that they are the controlled opposition. Because morale is an important thing in this fight, perhaps the most important. The removal of hope. Hope is it can be naive to hang your hope on hope, if you see what I mean. But you do need to have hope, and it's not, it may be an intangible thing, but it's an important thing. And it's important not to get bogged down in this idea that they've all got it all worked out. The elites, they've all got it out. They've covered all the bases, and certainly they will probably want you to think that way. And to be hopeful takes a certain amount of courage. It doesn't take very much courage to be nihilistic about such things and defeatist. It doesn't take that. People who say, people who are, what would you say, relentlessly negative. There's no courage in that. That's a surrender. That's a surrender even before the game has played, before the fight has started. Where's the courage in that? So it's, I think people should, we should all be wary of that. There are people out there who are doing their best, and at least they're doing something. I could say I'm doing my best. I'm probably not doing my best. I haven't sacrificed my entire life to this, but I'm trying to do something. And my life is important. And my loved ones are important. And I don't feel that I have to sacrifice everything that I have just to be in this fight. You can be in a fight. Soldiers get, they get compassionate leave. They get, they have a bit of R&R in order to keep themselves sane. It's not always a battle to the death, and the other thing about this is that the state it's my feeling that the state is the enemy here. The government, the state, and all the institutions of the state are the enemy here. And they appear to be winning. And the reason they appear to be winning is because they're managing to change the rules without actually changing the rules. What I mean by that is that they are pushing policies without really changing the law. Low traffic neighbourhoods, the trans bollocks, or no bollocks, perhaps you could say. The surveillance state, just put up surveillance cameras wherever they feel like it without any recourse to, making any of this stuff legal. They just fucking do it, But in the end, and I've said this before, in the end, the state's power is illusory. They appear powerful. And so long as we take them seriously, they are powerful. But my feeling is that we shouldn't take them seriously. And my feeling is that we shouldn't, we shouldn't underestimate them, certainly, because they do have a tremendous amount of power. But that power is mostly a mirage. And the power it comes from momentum. And what I mean by that is that they're using the power of the institutions and the power of law and all that kind of stuff to get their way. And they do that by relying on the fact that we as normal civilized citizens will respect the law. And for most of us, this is an unconscious thing. We just think it's a civilized way to behave, to obey the law. And in the same way that artificial intelligence and the algorithms and stuff and all of this stuff that surrounds it rely on us behaving in a rational way. They can only control us if they can predict how we will behave rationally. And so we should just try to make it so that we habitually don't behave rationally, because the algorithms can't cope with that. If we just do unexpected things, unexpected and illogical things, that will be they're at least in the short term anyway, their artificial intelligence is unable to will be unable to combat that. But an example of this in that, like for instance, there was a newspaper headline a few days ago that came up on my timeline, and it was about the Metropolitan Police are making redundant 60 homicide detectives. Now, I don't know how the Metropolitan Police is structured with all their particular police stations all around the capital, but they are doing it to save money. Now, that's a weird thing, isn't it? Because normally you think commercial operations make people redundant because the economic case is no longer made, and the people who are working for them are not offsetting the wages that they're put into them to make it profitable, to make it worthwhile. So they said, well, we're going to let you lot go. Now, but that's a commercial operation, and whether or not you think that's fair or not, that's if the commercial case is not being made, then that is what will happen. But the Metropolitan Police, as all police forces, are funded by the taxpayer. I mean, of course I say that, But then the way things are going, there may be all sorts of uh, all sorts of investment instruments might be contributing or not to things like the police force. In the same way that local councils were investing in Icelandic banks when the financial crisis hit. So, but they're saving money by doing that, because in some weird sort of internal accounting, they maybe have to save some money. So what they're doing is, in a normal run of things, the most heinous crime that a person can commit is murder. But that's not paying the bills. So they're going to make redundant 60 homicide detectives. And part of the reason they're doing that is because they are spending so much money on policing protests. And in particular, the Palestine protests, which have been happening every weekend for the last 3 or 4 months. So the point I'm getting to is that the police are not, to anybody, this is obvious to anybody who's been the victim of a crime recently, is the police are not actually interested in solving crime. That's not what their main priority is. In the same way that the public health is not the main priority for the National Health Service. The National Health Service's main priority is the National Health Service. And this is tricky to try and gauge what is the police force's main priority. I mean, my feeling is that their main priority is protecting the establishment. And probably a secondary priority is probably not so much law, but order. And having 100,000 Islamists, 100,000 Jew-hating Islamists on the streets every weekend is something that they can't apply the law to, because there's so many of them. So they can't arrest them. But what they can do is try and contain it. So the priority is order rather than law. So now they pass all these new laws, and they are relying on us as citizens to have an automatic respect for the law. So like our default position is that we obey the law. That's our default position, because we've all grown up with it. And we've grown up with the idea of respect for the law. So what they do is they think they just have to introduce laws. And they say this is illegal, that's illegal, that's not illegal, whatever it is. But they don't seem to have, and this is probably true to say, that they're not actually interested in enforcing the law, because they think they're not going to need to. All they think they need to do is just say that's against the law, and then we'll obey it. But there's nothing behind it. It seems that, like I say, murder is the most, in normal times, is the most heinous of crimes. And you'd think that that would be the police's first priority, to prevent murder, or at least to be able to detect a murder and to solve the murder and to catch the murderer and to bring them to justice. But I've been thinking for some time that isn't really the case. And so there are certain demographics, certain people for whom the law just means nothing and never has done. The Somali machete gangs, they're not concerned with law and order. They're not at all concerned with it. I mean, if they had any understanding of, how technically how serious it was to be walking the streets with a 3-foot knife, then they might not do it. But as so many of them probably just washed up on the beach several months ago. They don't know what the law is, and they're not interested, and nobody's taught them, and nobody suggested to them that they might go to prison for a very long time by having a 3-foot knife hidden inside their clothes. And so they don't have a default. They don't have a default that they won't do it. Their default is where they come from. You carry a big knife. And so that's what they do, And so the idea of the law is just something. It's just weird. This weird British thing that British people sort of obey. We're not going to do that. Why would we do that? So, and their experience since they've been in this country only reinforces that. They can wave their machetes around and attack people in broad daylight, and nothing will happen to them. So they don't have any fear of the law. So why should we? Why should we have any fear of the law? Why should we obey the law? Why should we obey the law in a lawless country? In fact, it's probably a very unintelligent thing to do. So, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't encourage anybody to be breaking the law. Perish the thought. But we should not fear the law, and we should not fear the state. Partly because, as I say, their power is illusory. But also because when it comes to it, they won't enforce the law. There are a few landmark cases where, just to be seen to be doing something, they will enforce the law. And like that chap Sam Mellier who put all the stickers up. Those are the sort of cases where they will enforce the law because they're sending a message. Because every so often there is a what would you call it? If there is sort of obvious and outright defiance of the law, from time to time they will feel that they need to make an example of somebody, and that is what they do. But they're not actually interested in enforcing the law generally. And to anybody who's had their car stolen or been burgled or anything, they're not in the slightest bit interested in dealing with it. All they do is, here's a crime number. Here's a crime number, and that's it. That's all they're going to do. So all this sort of doom mongering by the misery porn purveyors, I just don't think it is actually. I don't think there's any reality to it. These people are trying to. They're trying to make us scared as much as the government were trying to make us scared during COVID. And I get very frustrated with them. we have had successes. I mean, there are successes that we've had which will never be acknowledged. Um, the crumbling of the COVID stuff is a perfect case in point. And there are people, of course, I mean, there was somebody, a prominent commentator, was admitting that she was wrong about open borders and mass immigration. Now that's, she was a proper lefty. That's quite an admission. You know, um, it's disappointing that there haven't been more mea culpas from people about the whole COVID debacle. But that's you know for the moment that's a luxury that that may well come in time. But so many people were so invested in it that it's too difficult for them to acknowledge how wrong they were. You know? But it's difficult trying to keep your pecker up in these things, really, um, because there are so many people who are supposedly on our side, which seem to be, just in their desire not to be thought of as a fool, as a naive fool, will never acknowledge that we've ever had a success. And I don't find those people to be particularly useful. You know, um, I mean, the fact that they are trying to shut down the internet and criminalise speech, it just shows that they know that they're losing. It does show that. I mean, that they will become more vicious as their their positions are being exposed and their lies are exposed. It's astonishing how dishonest um, so many of these people are. So many people in the establishment and the media establishment are. It's astonishing, really. Uh, but anyway, I just wanted to sort of post this little rant. Um, I know it's rambling, but I haven't posted much recently, and I thought you deserved something. Um, so this is what I did. But my point is that we should not fear the state. You know, the state is evil, and it is the source of all of our problems. But the state is mostly staffed by the midwit class, and these people are utter morons. They're utter morons. I mean, there's some very, very Machiavellian people at the top, but most of these people are just the midwit morons. And and the straight talkers with the low status opinions, we will be vindicated. Um, so everybody take heart. Even my darkest times, I don't think we're going to lose. It's just how quickly will we win. So, like I say, everybody take heart, and above all, stay free.